Okay, we have a couple things coming up. On tonight, just review, we do have the shapes value composition. If you haven't done that already, be working on the shapes value composition. We're taking that picture and you're just doing shapes and forms of different levels of black to white and varying values to show that form, that shape. That's due tonight. Wednesday, we do have the shape builder. We're going to talk about the shape builder puppet warp tool. If you've looked at the assignment, you can download this file. It's a zip file. It has some of these cute little teddy bears in here. Gummy bears, whatever you want to call them. And actually, Thomas, can you hit the front light, please? There we go. So let's take a look at the process. If you go ahead and select the bear, we did mention this a little bit the other day, but if you select the bear, we can use the shape builder tool. This is then the class, the essentials version. Let me make sure I'm in the classics. So if you're in the essentials, it'll look a little differently. You have your shape builder right here. It doesn't actually have another option. Get your shape builder, and then you can go ahead and select several shapes. If you don't have them selected, it won't work the same. Once you've got several shapes selected, you can use your shape builder tool. You draw a line between shapes, and it starts to connect them or join them together. So I have all the portions of this bear selected. I can go ahead and start to join them together so these shapes start to belong together. And you can recolor it and color your fill and those kind of things as well once you've done that. But you can start to kind of merge all these what are organic shapes overlaid in different orders between the torso and front of the arms. And you start to combine some of them if you so choose. Show your shape builder tool, draw your line between them, and as soon as you start to cross those barriers, it will start to piece them together. Depending on which one you connect first, you may or may not lose the fill. You might have to go and recolor in the fill. But you can start to merge together. There's some instructions on the bottom of this document talk about how you might want to change and tweak each one. But experiment with putting the arms together with the torso, the legs together, merging different styles and shapes. And put them together. So if you have several selected, you can only do the two that are selected. If I don't have the head or the leg selected, it will not touch those. We'll keep them separate. So that's kind of an interesting connection piece as you go ahead and start building your cute little bear. So it's a fairly simple process. If you have different shapes, it doesn't have to be teddy bear shapes. It can be random shapes, and you can start to combine them, join them together. So you're creating random shapes that are now becoming unified or one piece. It's not different than grouped. Grouped is they're still individual pieces, and we can move them together as a grouped image. If they're ungrouped, they still then become individual pieces. Once we do this, we are combining 2, 3, 4 shapes, and they're now one solid shape. So we can't ungroup them and have individual shapes again. They're now become one whole. The two have become one. Sounds like some quote from the Bible. Two have become one. It's kind of like that idea. But we're not merging these pieces together, but you know the idea. So we've got your pieces put together as you've start to combine the bear. You can have fun with controlling some elements you want to combine. Like this one, obviously looks like a sketched bear. We need to combine some of his lines so he doesn't have weird joints together. So I'll go and combine some of these avenues. And then we can use, the next tool I'm going to show you is the puppet tool. Some of you were using the puppet tool the other day. I did show you briefly the puppet tool. I got to find, I don't remember where it is under the essentials. Yeah, I'm going to go to the Essentials Classic. I don't see it under the Essentials. So I'm going to go to Window, go to my workspace, go to Essentials Classics. The Classic, as you, if you know any of your Ice Age quotes, the Classic. But it'll look like this by default. There's this free transform tool. Click and drag that out. The puppet tool is hidden. Puppet warp tool. Click your puppet warp tool, and what you do with the puppet warp tool is you basically take an invertebrate, a teddy bear with no bones structure, and you start to give them a structure of a skeleton. So you can click with this puppet tool and give him joints. You want joints in the hand, the shoulders, the arm, the back, hip joints, leg joints. You start to create joints. So you can put as many joints as you want or as few joints as you want. Once you start to put in those joints, that's where the beauty comes in. With the puppet tool still activated, you can go and hover over one of those joints, those little black dots, and then you can start to move and create this cute little puppet. Start to animate your little bear. That could be, give him so his neck turns a little bit. That's a little awkward. Or his leg moves a little bit. Let me move, added a joint. Let's go ahead and start to move his leg a little bit around. You can make him so he looks like he's been walking or running or jumping, giving him some flexibility to his bowl full of jelly or whatever you happen to be using. So works with the bear, works with what other shapes you've got in line. Next week assignment, I know we're already in values composition, some of you are trying to consider finishing out that one. The build warp tool is due a week from tonight. That's another project. This is an exercise. It's not graded as heavily. I don't spend as much time looking at it when you do the work. You need to do the process principle. You'll get a grade for it. But in terms of the weighting, it's not as important as your projects. The project for next week is the build warp project. So I'm going to show you some examples. There are some on the, if you go to the projects forum, project examples, there are some build warp JPEG examples here under the project examples. You can see them. There's, I don't know, 5 or 6 different examples of some of the projects. I'll show you actually the Illustrator files, but there are some JPEGs here. You can see the work of some pictures put together. What it calls for in the project specs, you can look at it if you want now or just watch what we have here and review that later, is you're going to create a character from a more frontal position, like straight on position of a character. This looks like a little onion guy from, I don't know, one of the little Disney shorts. Create a front view of a character. That's what I would start with. You could do it in another order, but it's usually start with the front view. And then you will end up creating a side profile of this character, put them in action. This is quite an elaborate piece. A side profile. This was done by a student a few years ago. And then you do one where they're kind of more straight on, but they're moving around. Jogging, running, action shot from a standing, fairly front position, and then more from a side profile again where they're doing some motion, some action. So once you get your front piece, then you can kind of copy that piece over and create the puppet tool and other ways you want to manipulate the image of your guy or lady, person. And then you can do a side profile, and once you've got the side profile, you can copy it and you can put them into action, running, jumping, karate, whatever they're doing as your option. This one, I will say, this student spent a lot of time on this project. They use photos as references. So not to say you can keep them in your image, just put them off the artboard so they're not showing up if you were to save it as a JPEG file, but you can bring in reference files. They had a jogger and some type of ninja lady as some of the reference file to kind of have an idea what the form and shape would create. And then created their shapes and their forms, as you can see the different vest and sword elements to create what they were looking at. Yeah?
So are you saying you can still trace the original images?
You could trace if they, I would use a tracing block, a bounding block. Just when you're done, move the picture off the end, or maybe do the tracing off the artboard and bring it on when you're done. But yeah, that's an option. Here's another one, kind of cute little Rudolph, and they created the frontal version, and then they have a side version, and then a karate version Rudolph, and then Rudolph carrying a present to you in his version. So once you have one option. I will say the one with the ninja, they actually had kept everything individualized. I had to group them. I would keep them grouped together. Once you get it selected, select all the elements, group the elements, then you can still use the puppet tool even when they're grouped to create your different warpings if you want to use the puppet tool. Sometimes it's helpful to just actually position and move stuff around, change the formation, but you could use the puppet tool once they're grouped together as well to move stuff around. To that, just at some level, that looks really painful. You can have, just not supposed to bend that way. So, but you can use it as a grouped image. You can use it as an ungrouped image. And puppets typically work well with a grouped object, and not as an ungrouped layer of setups. So you got the little Rudolph. That was one they did. They have these all set together, and then they have each element that they start to maneuver and change the transition. I wouldn't say you could take a front profile, then easily just copy and paste and make a side profile. You're going to have to create 2 different versions. You're going to have to warp some, actually go into your pen tool or your different art shaping tools and reposition and create a separate version. You can use the same colors, the same swatches in your color scheme that you'll have listed in here, but you're going to have to probably redesign a front view and a side profile, and then you can animate or put them in motion once you've got one of each done in that regard. Cute little panda. This one was good, but not quite as elaborate. Karate, running around, Kung Fu Panda or something, I don't know. So this looks like him eating with chopsticks and then doing karate. I'm sure you're skilled in the ancient art of origami as well. So going from that. So those are some examples. I don't have any other, oh, maybe I have a couple other ones. So here's another one. This is kind of more of a cute cartoony character. Looks like, I don't know, some type of, you see in the Sunday morning papers kind of guy. A little more cartoony style that's not supposed to be maybe quite as realistic as the ninja. But Rudolph's realistic, that's not realistic, but the idea of kind of a more cartoony flavored of the side profile, front profile, then a side profile of another guy doing some before. So those are some examples. Use the puppet tool, modify your shapes, doing the pen tool, different shaping, modifying tools. You could use Shape Builder when you start to create different shapes. The Shape Builder will help you combine, the torso to the arms, or the head to the body, or whatever. So the Shape Builder tool will come and help as you start to create random shapes. You can combine them together if needed using the Shape Builder tool. The puppet tool can start to give them some animation as we go forward. Oh, cute little wolf running around, bowling, that kind of stuff is where it comes to be. So this kind of work, I don't expect you necessarily going to have, the ninja. You could have a cute little penguin. That took a little bit of time. I think they found a clip art piece of a penguin, and then they were able to modify the penguin to make it movable. So using different shapes, different things you find to create your little character, and then to start to create some animation or some life, some environment to them. So what's that?
So the shadows are a bit funky.
Well, I think this is supposed to be like a puddle.
Oh.
I don't think it's supposed to be a shadow. I think it's supposed to be a puddle. And I think that's another puddle, I think, as I remember. It's been a couple years since this person did the piece. So this one was a little different. It was like more abstract. You can see kind of some basic forms of the links going to it. So then all you got to go is go to your links tab, and then it's, never mind. Just too early to maybe start telling my puns. Anyway, some of you got it, some of you didn't. If you really want to, go ahead and review the video. You can get it later. Any questions on Puppet Warp? Doesn't look like it. So get your work in. I'll post a video if you want some review and see some examples on how they work. But your warp tool, your Puppet Warp tool, and then the Shape Builder tool will be helpful as you start to create a character and then piece together. Use reference images. That's totally fine. Find your favorite cartoon character or a photographic image that gives you a reference tool. That's totally fine. And I look forward to seeing the different types as we go along in class.